So Escape from Tarkov is an incredible game that I've played since early, I believe, 2018. I've owned EOD since around 2019, 2020, and I have around 1,500 hours in the game. Now, I know that is not as much as some chags running around with like 4 to 5, sometimes 10,000 hours in Escape from Tarkov. But I think it's enough to form a decent opinion and to see what the game is missing in some aspects. Now, obviously, Tarkov is missing quite a few things where it's still technically a beta. We have not hit 1.0. The full game has not released yet. We're missing some very obvious features when it comes to, map-to-map travel. Shit that the devs have talked about. We still have glaring issues like desync, cheaters, all that. What I want to talk to you about is one of Tarkov's most needed features that isn't a glaring problem that needs to be fixed, or an obvious implementation that the devs have talked about adding into 1.0 when it's released. Instead, it is a practical feature, one that Gray Zone Warfare has, and you've already seen it in the gameplay from the content creators and the people who got in because of content creators. You've already seen it there, and you've seen some really, really fun and interesting gameplay because of it. Now, what is the feature? Well, it's not one feature. It's kind of an amalgamation of features, right? There's 3 different features that make up this one feature that Gray Zone has, right? And what are those 3? So there is proximity chat, which we obviously already have. And then there's PMC karma, which not a lot of people like to talk about. And then there is shared bases between the different PMC factions. Now, why are these 3 so integral? Because if we take a look at Gray Zone and what they're doing right now, where they have their 3 different factions in the game, and each faction has their own base on a different side of the map. Everybody who plays on whichever of the faction will spawn in on that base. You're all there. The proximity chat comes into play when it comes to players asking if anyone wants to play. Hey, do you want to group up and go do these quests? Do you want to go out on an op? Do you want to go hunt players together? That's where that comes in, and obviously the basis part comes in there, right? So it really comes down to how Tarkov is going to implement all this, because when it comes to Tarkov is a free-for-all. Unless you're playing a scav, unless you're an evil scav, then most of the time it's a free-for-all. Everybody on each side is killing each other. It doesn't matter who's USEC, who's bear. You get quests as USEC to kill USEC. You get quests as bear to kill bear. And that's a problem, in my opinion. The one thing that Tarkov lacks immensely, and I think it is a problem, it is cooperation between the same PMC faction. You have to think about the basis behind Tarkov. You're not going in here solo. You go in as a faction. So it really makes no sense, and has never made any sense to me, that PMCs, both USEC and bears, were friendly firing on each other. We do have the rogues, which are like the, PMCs, mainly USECs, not mainly, all USECs, who obviously went rogue from the PMC faction, and they're more lenient towards the USECs. That's the most we've had in the way of PMC interaction with their own faction. And I think that's a problem in Tarkov, because there's no cooperation, there's no interaction other than fucking with people. I go into customs and I'm solo, and there's a guy in there, and he's like, yo bro, I'm gonna shoot you as soon as you walk around the corner, I'm super geared. And I'm like, oh, well, you better watch out for my 4 fucking buddies, like right outside, dog. And it's just for fucking with each other. And I would really like to see that change, because Gray Zone has shown that it can add an interesting level to the gameplay. Now, what comes with that is PMC karma, because until you add PMC karma, which I think Gray Zone needs to look into as well, there are no repercussions for being in the base, in the shared hideout hub, and being like, yeah, I want to group with you, seeing what gear they have, and then walking out into Tarkov and just, killing that person. So PMC karma really ties it all together. And then obviously you move on to the bases. Well, how you do that? Well, if you think about the way it's been talked about, we're each going to have our own hideout in Tarkov. Now, I don't see, even in a server-based thing, even if they do like what Gray Zone has, 16 players per faction. And obviously it's going to go server side at some point. Like it has to, the way that map-to-map travel is going to work. So you're not going to be able to have, probably, in my opinion, 48 different hideouts in one server, right? I just don't think that's feasible or reasonable. So it kind of comes down to, in my opinion, going old school, if you guys ever played War Z, where we have different faction hideouts. It was just different hideouts for like the survivors in War Z, but we have different faction hideouts for the different PMC companies and the scavs, right? So let's say in customs, that's a scav hideout, or in reserve. And let's say on woods, there's a USEC hideout. And let's say, you know, I don't know, in streets, there's a bear hideout, right? So if you want to get to your hideout that is a shared hub between different all the different players in the server on that faction, you have to travel to that side of the map and, you know, make your way to that hideout. And then there's a door there to where you travel down to your own hideout and you work on your stuff and you fuck with your stash. There's a trader, maybe a couple traders in that shared hideout, but once you go out of your hideout into the main hub hideout, there's like a safe zone in a specific area there that can be raided by scavs. I think that would be interesting. Scavs, maybe some specific bosses made for that, rogues, cultists, something like that, and obviously opposite factions. But you have this kind of moderately safe hub to where you can interact with the other members of your faction that are there doing their trading. And maybe we have a couple different, you know, maybe there's not just one on woods for USEX and one on streaks for bears. Maybe they're scattered, you know, a couple for each faction on different maps. That would be interesting. But it adds this new layer of gameplay where you're all designated in the same area, right? Like you all eventually have to go to the same spot or same couple of spots. So you're obviously going to end up meeting other players in your faction, and obviously that can lead to interaction, that can lead to teamwork. And I think that's very interesting, and it's something that we're missing, and there's so many layers that can be added on top of that, like I talked about, the raids on the bases from AI and from other players. That adds for intense moments. Say that you have 8 USECs in their hideout, not in their hideout, but in the hub hideout, and then you have a raid, right? Like maybe some bear-friendly AI start raiding the base, and there's some bears in the area, you know, on woods, so they come and start raiding it. So it's this big war over the space, and maybe if the bears are successful, they can't raid your personal hideouts, but they can raid like the different traders and vendors there. And maybe there's loot in there that the USECs can't access, but the bears can access for successfully raiding the base and capturing it, right? Very interesting stuff that can be done here. But on top of that, the main thing is it incentivizes teamwork. Maybe it doesn't incentivize it, but it gives the option, right? It puts you all in the same place with some of the same goals in mind, and it gives you the opportunity to speak over your mic and be like, hey, you guys want to fucking team up and go kill some people? You know, go do some quests, go loot some shit. And I think that's something that we're desperately missing in Tarkov, especially if you take a look at everything that is for Tarkov. Like when it comes to the trailers, when it comes to the live raid series, it's all built around teams and these factions working together. And obviously you can do that, right? You can hop on Discord, you can jump in the Tarkov Discord, you can jump in different content creators Discords, and you can look for people to play with. But I think, in my personal opinion, when I'm playing a video game that, you know, has the possibility of teamwork, I like to find that team in game. I don't like to have to use external sources to find that team. And the thing about Escape from Tarkov is it's very hard to do that outside of using Discord or Reddit or something like that. But Grayzone puts it right there in your hands, and I think that is super cool and super interesting, and something that I definitely think Tarkov should prioritize, because not only would it add a whole new layer to the game when it comes to PMC karma, you know, bases and shit like that, and this is probably all 1.0 shit. I wish they could get a functioning version of it in quick, but it's definitely all 1.0 shit. But it also revitalizes the game in the sense of it changes the way the game plays. It's no longer a free-for-all. It's faction on faction, the way that I think it's supposed to be in Tarkov. It's not supposed to be a free-for-all. And you know that, or you would just load in and, you know, click, I want to play what this guy looks like, and use all the clothes in the game. No, the factions are set up to where you use your own PMC company's uniforms, their faces, their voice lines, and that's how it is. It's set up to be faction-based, which faction leads to teamwork. And if we further look at scavs, I mean, to be honest, the scavs, when they added scav karma, it added a whole new level of gameplay there, with communicating with other scavs, getting great big teams of scavs with less likelihood of being betrayed. There's still the chance there, but it's less likely, from what I've experienced. You get this big team and you go hunt PMCs on a map. Now, while I think scavs are a problem, scav players are a problem in their own right, and we'll talk about that in a later video, it definitely added a whole new layer of gameplay that made your scav worth playing past the point where you were rich beyond belief, right? And I just think when PMC karma hits, if they do it right, if they do it with some kind of base format or like hideout or safe hub for the different factions, I think it could be very, very, very interesting gameplay. I want you guys to let me know what you think in the comments down below, though. I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. I know PMC karma is a touchy subject for a lot of people in this community because they feel like the game is supposed to be a free-for-all, hold W, fucking jumping around corners. But in my opinion, it's not. Now, I wouldn't go as far as some people to say like it needs to be completely super hardcore, like you have to poop in raid, like, not like that. But I think there should definitely be more features added that incentivizes teamwork, team play, all of that from faction to faction, like they've done with the scavs. And PMC karma is definitely required for something like that to happen. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I will see you dudes on the next one. My name is Toot, and I've been your host. Peace out.